your success is directly proportionate to your preparation.
Welcome to Mindset Lessons from the Field. I'm Gina Casassa, the author of Training with the SEAL. I say that now because I've recently put up a couple of chapters of the book on Substack. So go check it out. It is slowly getting up there, but you guys get something. So check it out. Today's guest is a former U.S. Army Special Operator, medic, and trainer who spent over a decade teaching elite forces to perform under extreme pressure. After leaving the military, he transitioned into defense consulting, leading projects in human performance and resilience before founding his own company, Valor Point Human Systems, to help leaders align health, mindset, and purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really excited to introduce you to Chad White. Chad, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. We don't get too many medics on the show, and I'm curious in terms of, first of all, why the medic route? As our listeners may or may not know, that is a longer route. I believe it's an extra year. Is that correct?
Correct. In the SF qualification course, it is.
You could get let go at any point, right? At any point, and you get like a second try. And then after that, it could be over. And so I'm curious, why the medic route? Like, did you know you wanted to go into special forces? And then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, to make that story as brief as possible, I actually went on active duty right out of high school. I enlisted at 17, and I started off in the Navy. Yeah, I went into the Navy, went into Naval Special Warfare training, went to BUDS to SEAL training. Actually went twice. I had some injuries the first time, spent some time on a ship where the corpsmen that I worked with were really impressive to me. And I had a childhood fascination with medicine. Then the corpsmen that I worked with, the independent duty corpsmen, like their capability of what they could do individually was really impressive to me. Went back to BUDS a second time, had some personality conflicts with some instructors, and it ended up being a short term there. I completed my enlistment in the Navy, switched over to the Army. And whenever I came in on a Special Forces contract, at the time you got to choose your position, which isn't always the case. But I asked to be an 18 Delta to be a Special Forces medic, and they granted me that. And it's one of the most grateful decisions I think I've ever made.
Now let's talk about the fact that you went to BUDS twice. How far did you get your second time?
The second time I was through first phase. I think I was a week or two before Hell Week. And it was an unfortunate situation. A story from a bar followed me out to training, and it wasn't true, but, nonetheless, there were some folks that didn't want me there, and I tried to gruel through it. And after a while, it's one of those things. It's like, they don't want me here. And I was a kid. I was 19 years old the second time through. So, you have enough people saying that, we don't want you here. It's like, okay, well, I won't be here. I'll find something else. So I think that culture's changed a lot since then, at least from what I hear. It's a little different, but that was my experience.
So I have to ask, because, okay, I get it though. 19, it was like, the way you were saying it, it's like, they just didn't want me. Why be here? Right. But
Yeah.
Does that not still sting, like that ping of rejection in terms of like, I wanted this, I want to be here, and this like is haunted, like this story that's not true is affecting me in terms of, and I ask this because, especially with social media and the digital age and stuff like that, that's coming up, people, and the thing is, people have a perception of you, whether they know you or not, and it's really, really hard to change that perception. And sometimes it does just affect us. Now, we're two different genders. So, I just can only speak for the female, where males seem to be like more like whatever, but did it sting at all? Like that rejection?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it took years to get past. I think one of the things you bring up, the gender differences, I think for men, especially at such a young age, a lot of men are looking for a validation. And that's what I guess burden I had placed on that program is like, this is it. If I can do this, then like I'm deserving. I'm a man amongst men. It took years to get past. Even coming into special operations in the Army, it was still a challenge for years. I had friends from the time I was on a ship, and I would spend a lot of time in Virginia Beach going to see my friends up there. And every time I was there, I was in the land of the SEALs, and I was like undeserving to be there in my own mind. So yeah, people have their perception of you. I think your perception of yourself is a much more substantial thing to try and change. It took me a long time to get past that. And it was ultimately getting into deployments and operations and missions where I got to see how we all worked, and I got to see the validity. I got to see the benefits of each different community. That was a huge plus within the global war on terrorism. Is a lot of things were in a joint environment. So a lot of us work together, a lot of SEALs, special forces, Marine Raiders, Marine Recon guys. I mean, Air Force commandos, like all of us got to do joint operations, and seeing the strengths that each one had. And like it's like there's a specific personality that goes into each one and works out better for each person, I think. So it was good to see that special forces ended up being especially being a medic. I think if I would have stayed in naval special warfare, I wouldn't have done that. That was, like I said, one of the best things that I fell into was choosing to be a medic.
Now, how did you, because you mentioned it took years, which is, it's normal. It weighs on you, and especially when you're around it and stuff like that. How did you, and you said in particular, like the perception of ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we shift that? And how did you in particular shift that perception of yourself from it weighing on you so much to just allowing it to just to roll over and let go?
A couple of different things. One, seeing that there's really great and not so great guys in the naval special warfare community. So just becoming a SEAL doesn't make you like the best thing ever. Like there's dirtbags in every community. So that was one part of it. Seeing where I excelled and fit really well in the special forces mission, in the unconventional warfare, the type of things that we trained to do and the things that we did, the way that we operated, experiencing that success, and also just getting a different set of things that established my appreciation of myself, my value of myself. And a lot of that was a faith aligned thing. I was raised in a Christian home, and while there were times in my military career I deviated from that, that's one thing that I did come to realize is I was born with all the worth that I was ever going to have. So I was given a lot of skills and traits and capabilities, and that was a thing that was polished, but it was an innate quality.
I love that you kept going. You're like, I'm gonna break into some community, right, in the special forces realm, which just seems like what you originally wanted. So then why medic? Especially, here's my question. You didn't choose like an easy route in terms of you could have been anything else besides an 18 Delta, right? And so why that one, especially with the ping of rejection from last time?
I still remember making the choice when I first left the Navy and joined the Army. I was going to be an 18 Bravo, a Special Forces weapons sergeant. I was going to just jump out of planes and get in gunfights, and that was it. That's all I wanted to do. And while I was in assessment selection, I remember something just clicking in my head. And all of us come here to do this job, and there's a training, operations, gunfighting, killing bad guys, thing that we're all going to do here. But how much better would it be to get this exceptional training on top of that, have a dual set of capabilities to where I could save my own guys as well. And again, having a lifetime fascination with, on and off of medicine and medical capabilities, getting it demonstrated by the corpsmen in the Navy that were incredible to work with. Was just thinking that would be an additional awesome thing to do. And I wasn't so concerned about the extra time it took to train, because I knew SF medics had the reputation of being some of the best medics on the planet. And if I were going to have teammates' lives in my hands, that's what I wanted is that level of training.
Talk to us about the going through the Q course and what it was like, that route of medic. Did you have any rollbacks?
I did. I actually recycled more times than you're normally supposed to. I think you only get one performance recycle and then one administrative recycle. I got an extra one. Actually, I did both of those. It was a really awesome dynamic time for me, because I was having some relationship issues with my first wife while I was in the Q course. I got those out of the way early. My first wife and I split up while I was halfway through the medic course. Starting that course off, at the time, they had anatomy and physiology and pathophysiology, the 6-week phase that was the hardest of the didactic portions of the course. That was up front. And that was the first high point of attrition in the course. I remember thinking that I was not a smart person. I didn't perform very well in high school, throughout my school. I barely passed certain subjects. So I'd spent all that time until then just thinking I wasn't that smart. And I got there and I learned how to study in that course. There wasn't a reclassing option at the time, where throughout different parts in history, there are times where if you don't make it through the medic course, you can maybe go be a Bravo or a Charlie or something else. At the time, they were telling us, hey, if you don't pass the medic course, like you're most likely going to the 82nd Airborne Division. I was like, that's it. I'm going to go to the conventional Army, and I'm just probably going to hate my life a little bit. I worked hard, and I learned that your success is directly proportionate to your effort there. And I learned how to study, and I learned the mechanisms of successful, knowledge development and doing things I needed to academically. And fortunately for me, the hands-on portions of it, the trauma parts, where you're doing your work, that came a lot more natural to me, and I did all right with that naturally, and it was good. Yeah, I recycled once, performance recycle, combat trauma management, and then I recycled once for the relationships in my marriage separation. I needed to take care of some personal issues, so they gave me a compassionate recycle for that. And then at the very end of the course, I failed something that no one really ever fails, and that was the written test for anesthesia. And I failed that part. And I still remember my instructors coming in just being dumbfounded. They're like, how have you gotten this far and you failed this? I was like, I impress myself sometimes. I don't really know, but they allowed me to stay through that. That's the one thing. Like I said, I wanted to do all the other things, but being a medic was what I ended up kind of doing the best at in my military career.
What was going on in your mind during these recycles? Because it's like that could be it, right? And then also after you had one, then you find out, oh my God, I failed the test. Like I already had, you weren't even, I'm going to make the assumption maybe that you didn't know that they were going to give it to you, at some point, and then you found out. So what, between that duration of like, this is it, it's over, to like, I get a second chance. So then the pressure of, I can't fail again. Like, walk me through that mindset. And what did you do to just allow yourself to keep moving forward towards success?
I focused on the things that made me successful, which were perhaps in the initial preparation of those phases that I didn't do so well at. Maybe my work and my training got a little sloppy, got it a little neglected here and there. I focused on, removing the things that needed to be removed. I mean, like, I would not drink. I would not stay up late. I would not do any of the things that you want to do because you're thinking you're already on your way to being a commando and trying to absorb yourself in that lifestyle or insert yourself in that lifestyle. I would focus more intently on what I was doing. I would study relentlessly and, rehearse relentlessly on the hands-on test. I'd do well under pressure, which I guess is a good quality to have as a medic, but also to the point where they jokingly would call me the comeback kid in the medic course because I did a lot of failing and coming back. And, those are the phases that I recycled. There was even one, the nursing instructor, I believe she's out of the military now though, Colonel Ripka. Major Ripka at the time. She came in, I remember I was coming through the course with her brother and one of her good friends who she ended up marrying later on, had a beautiful family with. But she came in because we kind of had a little bit of a personal relationship, and she threw the door open and walked into the classroom and is like, you are the first person that has ever failed my test. I was like, I am a terrible human being. Like, I hate that I'm here. And she took me to her office, went over some specifics of, retraining over with me. I studied, came back, I think the next week, took the test again. She came back in, threw the door open again, and just looked at me. And I was like, there's no way I just failed this. She's like, you're the first person to ever fail my test and the first person to ever make 100 on my test. And that ended up being the theme of my time in the medic course. Was I may bomb it the first time, but the second time, I usually come through pretty well. So,
wow. What do you have anything for someone that did you put any pressure? Like, what was it leading up? Was it just like, listen, I'm just going to put my head down. I'm going to grind. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. Or is it that you need that pressure in order to excel?
I think at that time and in that circumstance, I needed that pressure because it was a very enclosed training environment. And I think I needed that for what I was doing there. Just because it is the SF qualification course, particularly the medic one, is very long and it's a lot of time. And it's very easy to get kind of straight off the path and kind of get distracted and get lazy at times. So I think having that pressure put back on me was something I needed then. I won't discount the fact that there are probably certain experiences you go through where you should realize you are maybe doing something you shouldn't be doing, but that wasn't a question in my mind. I felt like that's what I wanted to do. I was capable of doing it. And I had, support from people around me. And, I knew that when I applied myself and I prepared which preparation being as complex as it is, where study, rehearse, perform, recover, rest, all those things being part of the process, doing those things appropriately in the right ratios, I knew I could be successful. So I knew if I began to not be successful, then I needed to reassess and reaccount for all those things, go back to ground level and build it from there up and start over and get myself together and get back to work.
So let's talk about then your medic career and how long were you how long was your career?
Came into the Army in '07, had to redo basic training, airborne school, the prep course, and then selection, the SF qualification course. I got into 3rd SF group in 2010. So it took just under 3 years to get there. And from 2010 until February of 2020, whenever I was medically retired from the military, I was a medic. Spent most of that time at 3rd group. I spent a little over a year at a special mission unit, had some medical issues there. And I mean, that's part of another story with injuries and more recovery. The majority of my time was at 3rd Special Forces Group.
As a medic, I mean, for me, I don't want to see your injury. Like that is just, I'm squeamish. No, not for me. Also, that's somebody else's life in my hands. That's serious pressure. And also, if you look up calm in the dictionary, like I'm not under that. Like there's no way. And when things kind of happen, I don't know how I could like just and focus and do my job, not panic, like not internally. It just, and sometimes our emotions, they just kind of take over, and I know that
Sure.
you have training, so it's like, but also, especially like if it's a friend, like it's your teammate, right? That's also a very different thing than a stranger. That's a totally different mindset. How do you prepare for that? How do you mentally manage that, and what did that teach you about pressure that you then translate to today and business?
I think that there are a series of things that set you up to go into that career field. And I won't say that we're just the only people in the world categorized to do that. I think a lot of people are capable, probably more than try to do it, but I think there's a certain set of experiences and capabilities and things that predispose you to want to go do those things. There's mechanisms in training that prepare you pretty well. Like you mentioned, you do get trained to a little bit desensitized, more exposed than desensitized to it, because I think the reaction, the natural, I mean, they screen out most of the sociopaths. They need a certain response out of you to work the way you, whenever you're seeing the blood and whenever there's times that it may be your friend. Times for me, it was my friends. But you develop this innate sense of calmness where, and I used to say this whenever I was an instructor of medics, there's a time for quickness and efficiency, but not panic. So you can work urgently, but you don't panic ever. You go through enough training and exposure, and you learn how to prioritize things enough and deconflict, your responses of your amygdala and all the other things that cause you to get too keyed up and too shaky. And you learn how to calm yourself down to where this has to be done right. So I have to calm myself down. I need to do this right now. And there's mechanisms of training, even throughout the Q course, that in the more generalized parts of the field training and things, whether it's sleep deprivation in the field training or SEER school and certain things that I think do certain things, because my teammates and I found ourselves, the non-medic teammates that I had, we would be in gunfights. And I remember my team sergeant after one operation come back and he said, "You guys, there were 12 RPGs that exploded behind us. And we were in a gunfight through the entire day. And it was one of the most gnarly missions we ran." And he's like, "You guys are running around on the rooftop laughing, shooting at people. Like, that's not normal. There's something wrong with you." There's a non-standard response that you kind of get to have, because at some point it's like, we're trained to be here. We've got great support. We're the people here to do this. We're probably the best here doing it right now. So we're gonna get it done. I go back and comparing that to, as much as I can, to the business world or to other situations outside of that. There's high stress, no fail situations that you get into. And I think back to, your success is directly proportionate to your preparation, your removal of biases to think that you shouldn't be there, or to think that you can't do this, or to think that you're not the right one. I mean, you've got to eliminate all that from your mind and realize, like, you are there and you're going to do that. and you're there for that reason, and you just stay calm and get it done. I think there's little physiological mechanisms you can use. I mean, I used to teach my students, self-talk is a big thing. So don't tell yourself before, during, or after that you screwed up, or I messed up, or this is going down the drain, or whatever it may be. It's like things are going to happen. That's a little subset of resilience. Is, you walk into a room and you accidentally knock over your glass of water. It's like, it's all right. It's fine. Wipe it up and keep going. Like, things happen. You're a human being. You may misstep or misspeak, but we all do. So I think regardless in your preparation and your confidence in what you do, I think you step into it, you own it, and you just figure it out.
I will say, like today, actually, Randy Weitenheimer, who was just on the show for the third time, he is my teacher. He's trained special forces. And one of the big things that we've been working on for the past 3 years is like no emotion in business. Like take your emotion out of it. And when things happen, you just have to roll with it, right? And I have been doing a great job at that recently. It took me a while to get there, but I do remember when, so I was an actress and I went into acting for a bit. And I also did a civilian SEER program. And when I was acting, there was a scene we had to do in my acting class where I was in jail, and but it was a setup. Like the boyfriend at the time in the scene like put drugs in my purse, and I ended up in jail. And I'm like, you have to tell them that it was you. I can't go back in there. And all of a sudden, I just start hysterically crying in the middle of the scene. Hysterical. I'm like, I can't go back in there. Like in my mind, I'm actually picturing like what it was like. I wouldn't do well in jail. Like I know that. And I'm just picturing this and I'm hysterical, right? And then I did SEER, it's the civilian SEER, and that was absolutely terrifying for me. And I remember like talking to my family and they're like, but none of that is real. Like none of it was real. Why did it affect you? Like, and I'm like, no, but they make it seems so real. It just seems like you're in that moment. And I like putting myself in those situations in order to learn about myself. However, I do understand that that is total next level. Like a civilian isn't going to put themselves through a kidnapping program. Like that's just next level weird, right? So like what could was like do you think in terms of training wise that we could maybe put ourselves through to induce stress in a normal way that puts us in that safe environment? Like I said, technically, we had a safe word in acting class. It was a safe space. Like there was, like it wasn't technically real. Someone pulls you out if need be, right? So what
Your
could
brain doesn't know that.
your brain? Yeah, no, exactly. Your brain does not know that. And how do you teach it to understand like this isn't like this is we're going to make it through? I guess maybe it's that self talk that you were mentioning, or I don't, and then just you kind of. I don't know about you, but for myself, I would have these voices in my head when I was going through the Navy SEAL prep program. Hated every second of it. And while we were running and things like that, like one side of me was like, this sucks. You don't need to be here. Like, just quit, like go home, like all this stuff. And then the other part of me was I was literally felt like crazy. I was two parts of me are talking to each other, right? And it was just like I had to keep saying like, no, this is so much fun. And I'd be making myself smile and laughing. Meanwhile, like my other side is like, you're lying. Like none of this, and I'm like, well, I lie to myself all the time, but that doesn't make it any less true or not. So I want to know more about how we can train the brain to, like, I guess, put us in that safe or at least like calm ourselves down to not react and also trigger the brain to then calm the rest of the body down, because once the brain feels like it's not safe, then everything, the heart rate, the breathing, the chest tightening, it all just kind of like implodes. And by the way, I want to ask you, I know that was long-winded, but like for yourself, training with your best friend being injured or your teammate being injured, and then all of a sudden it happening in real life, like I don't know if there's a story or something like that for you that you could translate this where you actually experienced this.
I was trying to make a list of all the things I wanted
Yeah,
to say to
sorry, it was
respond
a
to that.
lot.
No,
It
no,
was a
no, that was
lot.
good. That was great. That was a great question. A couple of parts are your brain didn't know that you weren't really going to jail at the time. The unfortunate side of that neurological response you have is, you look at folks that have bad reactions to traumatic situations and post-traumatic stress, right? The unfortunate thing is there's something telling their brain that they're back in a bad situation. They need to respond accordingly, and they're not, which is a maladaptive thing. Or you could look at the useful side of that, and it's mental rehearsals. One of my fond videos of that is, look at the Blue Angels, look at their preparation. They look ridiculous. They're sitting in a room together with their eyes closed and they're going through all of their tricks. They're the best in the world at what they do. So I'm not going to knock what they're doing. There's a very substantial purpose in that. I had another teammate of mine that was his advice to guys going to the combat dive qualification course that SF does out in Key West. The hardest test down there is one man comp. And that's where they black out your mask and they take your hoses and they tie them up behind you and spin you around the pool. And it's one of the hardest tests. But in preparation of that, you just envision yourself calmly working through it. Those mental rehearsals cause a physiological response for a deconfliction of your sympathetic nervous system. You can stay calmer. Your heart rate can stay lower. You can use less oxygen, and you just envision success to the point where you make yourself believe you're going to be successful, and you subconsciously, like you're just there, you're going to be successful. I think rehearsals, also the voices in your head where you were saying going through the prep program where you're telling yourself, this is fine, this is okay. And then at times you're like, this is dumb, I need to quit. Everyone has those voices, but I think the loudest one is the one that you speak with the most. And if you can continually tell yourself like, this is where I belong, this is like, whether it's I'm having fun, or, whatever you need to tell yourself, something positive. At one point in my career, I got through an entire 6-month deployment using that strategy of like, fake it till you make it. Like, I'm going to force a smile on my face that is super fake, and I don't want to be here. I hate what I'm doing. I don't like the guys I'm around. I don't like any part of this. I just started smiling and saying like, this is going to be great. Not only that, again, there's a faith aspect of that too. Like, I am here for a reason. There's a purpose that I am in this place at this time. And I ended up making some great friends, doing some great work. It ended up being an incredible experience. Like, it started off terrible, but I just was like, I'm not going to live that way for 6 months. This is going to be better than that. And so I kind of did the fake it till you make it thing. And then it just started being a subconscious fact. And then it turned out okay. To working on friends as a medic, that's a much, much deeper scenario. But yeah, I had a couple of times I worked on friends. One substantial time we had a green on blue attack, which is where the Afghan forces we train. That's, SF's specialty is, we train a partner force. So in Afghanistan, we would train Afghan commandos and special forces, and sometimes, unfortunately, lower qualified guys to work with us. And they would turn on us and attack us for a variety of reasons. They would get, the Taliban or Al Qaeda or Haqqani or some group would kidnap their family, or they would pay them off, or something, something to the effect of it would make them turn on us, and they would attack us. That happened to us early 2014. We had a large group of my company there, multiple teams. And they attacked us, and out of our company killed 2 guys, wounded 4 others. And it was Tico Skelt, who was a good friend of ours. He was an 18 Bravo, who was our B team ops sergeant at the time. Kind of looked at him as like the godfather of our company because he was one of the more experienced guys. He was super gangster. Like, he had the best stories of just how early on in the war, like he was getting at it, like just brutal operations. John Pelham was one of our SADE guys, who was one of our like in the field with us intelligence collection guys doing a lot of digital intelligence work. Those 2 guys were the ones that were killed in that. 4 of the other guys, including one of my teammates. The shooting first started happening. We were getting ready to go out on a bigger operation. I was kind of sitting on the other side of a wall, kind of trying to sit down and rest for a minute, and heard some gunfire. But I mean, there was mortars and gunfire intermittently throughout the day, so I didn't initially really think that much of it. It sounded kind of close. And then I heard my team sergeant yell, like, get over here. So I snatched up my aid bag and I ran over to where they were. Tico was on the ground, unconscious, and I saw he had been shot in the neck. And what I didn't know until afterwards, he had been shot in the front of his shoulder. When I exposed him a little more, I was shot in the front of his shoulder here. So I initially started focusing on his neck. I had another guy there with me who put pressure on his neck as I started working on him. What I didn't know was the round that hit him in the shoulder spun through the inside of his chest and kind of shredded everything inside. He was bleeding out internally, and we didn't know. He was unconscious when I got there, which is kind of indicative. Usually if someone has already lost their consciousness, not looking too good that they're going to be back with us. But I worked on him anyway. I worked on him until another friend and medic of mine came up to me and kind of like was checking him out while I was working on him. And he was like, hey, he's gone. Like, there's more we can do here. And I moved on to another patient. And I struggled with that for a very long time. That was one of my hardest ones. And I think mindset at the time working on him was just, it was one of those things is like, hey, Tico's down. Like I felt no emotion. It was just like I was going to work, doing what I was trained to do. There wasn't any emotion to think of at the time. I was thinking through my series of treatments that I was doing. One of the convenient things I think of the way we are trained is once I worked on him and I was like, and I, whenever Wes, the other medic came but said that to me, he's like, hey, it's time to move on. Like I felt his pulse and I felt his weak, thready pulse like slow down and stop. So I knew he was telling the truth. I knew he was gone. So I went to work on another guy. I moved on to my teammate, Drew, who had also been shot 2 different places through the arm and into the foot. I think a round ricocheted up into his foot. To work on Drew and started administering some treatments to Drew. That was another difficult situation to get through. We had to stay out the way they kind of do things. They want to do a brief investigation of things before they let everybody take off. So we hung out for a couple of days in that spot. We didn't talk about it too much about what was going on. It's like we were all there for it, and we will like compartmentalize those things and just put those on the back end of the deployment. We'll handle that later. We got other stuff to do right now. Yeah, we could go into a lot of different directions with that story. I think what is the most valuable aspect of that experience that I can provide you?
I wrestled with that for a long time afterwards. So I feel like that is something that, and it doesn't translating that to civilian life, it could be I failed at something. I let somebody down. I failed somebody else, So I want to know more about how you wrestled, how you wrestled with it, how you dealt with it, whether it was healthy or unhealthy, and then how you, I guess, in a way, healed or moved. I don't want to say like moved, but like accepted. That's a better word. Accepted.
Yeah, I dealt with it a very unhealthy way for a long time.
And did you know that, by the way? Like, did you have an awareness of I am dealing with it in this way, or was it just kind of like you didn't realize you were doing it until like that was the cause of it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, because it was an unhealthy mechanism I was using. I was just drinking. I would drink a lot. And it worked out at the time because of the requirements of my job. Like, I couldn't come to work drunk. And so it wasn't that severe. And I knew like I still had to be there early because we ran a pretty tight team. So I knew that I had to be there at 7 a.m. to do a workout, pretty substantial workout every morning. And I wasn't going to punish myself and just be miserable and hungover every time. Not that I never did. But so I didn't drink very often during the week. Usually we were busy enough with the work that we were doing. That wasn't a conflict during the week. But on weekends, absolutely, for memorials and certain events, like there was a lot of drinking around those things. And I went for years, just like Memorial Day was the worst day of the year for me. And I remember my wife would even say, like, whenever Memorial Day was coming around, she's like, what are we going to do this year? Like, because she knew it was going to be a rough couple of days. And I knew it was unhealthy, but the culture lent to it a little bit. It's like, that's what we did, have drinks to remember the guys, have drinks together. It's also a way of procrastinating and putting it off. And I didn't have to deal with it because whenever the feelings would come up, I would just drink and they would just put them away. It's like turning it off. Part of learning to deal with that and accepting it for what it was. At first, it was realigning myself with my faith, where I had kind of gone off the trail a little bit. Is accepting your own fate is tough, but accepting someone else's fate is even tougher. And knowing that I was a good medic, there were other good medics there, and there was not anything any of us could have done to save him. I had the luxury of a friend of mine who was our battalion surgeon that was there for the autopsy. And he's like, there's nothing any one of you could have done. You've got to, like, you guys did what you could have. So that was good. Understanding that God had that planned out for him. Fortunately, in that circumstance, because of what I believe, like Tico was also a believer. So I have faith that, he made his way home whenever that happened. But I think the biggest part of healing for me in the intensity of what that was actually after my retirement, I did an event, this stand-up paddleboard event, which sounds crazy. It was a 32-mile thing from Catalina Island into Huntington Beach that one of my teammates invited me to do.
That's cool.
It's amazing. Open Water is the organization. They do amazing things for first responders and veterans. They invited me out. My old teammate, Jake Green, invited me out to to be a part of it. He helped kind of stand that thing up. And the first year, I was still drinking too much. Didn't really. I'm like, it's paddleboarding. Like that's what I know. I know girls that do that on Saturday morning. They like do yoga on the board. It's not that bad. I went out there and I think I was hungover when we started that year, and I got 12 miles into it, and I couldn't even stand up on the board. Like I was on my knees paddling until like my knees were bleeding because of the friction on the board. I'm like, this is absurd. Like I don't know what I'm doing, and I had to quit. And I felt so bad because those people had come around me to support and love and care about me and try to help me however they could, and I felt like I failed them. So we went in, and the next day, everyone's kind of high fiving each other, like they had completed it and they had such a great time and a great experience. And I was just like, I am a failure. And so I started drinking. Had a conflict with a couple of guys out there. They kind of told me to leave and go home from where we were at, which was embarrassing. And I got back, and that was the first and only time in my life where that night I'm like, I have had so many failures. Like I failed SEAL training. I've failed TICO. I've failed, all these different things. And I went through like the list of all my failures in my career, and they stacked up on my chest. And I was like, I'm done. Like I can't do this anymore. Fortunately for me, Chris Free, who is my psychologist and good friend now, I called him out in Hawaii, and he answered the phone, and he fortunately was there to talk to me for a little while and kind of talked me off the ledge and helped me through that evening. And the next day, Danny, who is one of the guys who also founded Open Water, spoke to me, and he's like, "Hey man, I love you. Give me a call when you get home." I remember thinking to myself, I was like, I've got sons at home. I've got, I had one at the time. I had two more on the way. I had two at the time. I had two more. I had twins after that. I was like, I'm not going to let anything not allow me to raise my sons, to include myself. So I got back. I called Danny. He helped me get into AA. I went to a couple of meetings. It wasn't really for me, but 2 or 3 were okay. And then I took 14 months off of drinking, like complete sobriety for 14 months, and no drinking, no other substances. I did like barely had any coffee. Like it was great. But that was something that I needed to do to get through the holidays, the memorials, all the events that cause those memories to come up. And I had to acknowledge them. And I had to go through it. I had to feel the feelings. I had to process it. I had to understand it. It helped me work through processing all those things that I should have done years ago that I just put off and ignored and just not had the courage to step up and look at objectively the way I needed to. Secondly, it kind of helped me reappraise and reassess my perspective on alcohol and see that more accurately for what it is because for some people, I know alcohol can be a pleasant thing and an enjoyable thing. They can have a couple drinks and it contributes to them having a good time. Alcohol became something that I misused, and for so long that it was something different for me at that time. So that 14 months helped me reevaluate the way that I saw that and how I looked at it and how I use it. And my wife and I do have some drinks sometimes now, but it is a very different picture than what it used to be.
This podcast episode is brought to you by Thrivers Coffee. Podcast guest Nick McKinley's company, Deliver Fund, brings you guys Thrivers Coffee. It is ethically sourced, it's organic, and it supports traffic survivors. That is right. Thrivers Coffee is all about empowering us to making a difference in the fight to end human trafficking. That's why 100% of the proceeds go directly towards their goal of bringing freedom to victims of human trafficking. So if you guys love coffee that is organic, ethically sourced, and tastes absolutely delicious, and want to help to end the fight of human trafficking, check out Nick McKinley's company, Thrivers Coffee. Talk about that 14 months in terms of, you said you had to feel the feelings, confront things, right? That is challenging. That's hard. And
yes,
you're going to want to not do that, right? And you're going to want to just grab that drink or whatever it is to what was there a day that you may remember and share, and how did you not do it? Meaning like where you were close to doing it, you weren't sure if you can, because I'm sure listeners can relate to this. It's like you're super close to, I guess in a way, failing yourself, right?
yeah.
By just taking an easier route. And then what did you do to go, no, like I'm just going to get through it. Like I'm gonna accept the pain. I'm going to figure all this out.
I think I had a unique experience maybe in that. I don't know a lot of people that have chosen to do it kind of the way I did it, but because of the fact that I put my kids' their lives as the consequence on that, it made it very easy for me to say like 100% not touching it. There were definitely challenging situations. I went to a friend of mine was retiring out of SEAL Team 6. I went up to Virginia Beach for his retirement, which was the beers started at the ceremony and then continued throughout the day, late into the night. Everyone was drinking, celebrating, having an awesome time. And some great friends of mine up there, and I didn't have a drink the whole day. I may have smoked an entire pack of cigarettes, and I'm not a smoker, but that was the thing I chose that day. I was like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do this. And again, like I think the only one of us even smoking. Nobody smokes hardly anymore, but that's the thing I picked. But I got through it. And the next morning I was thankful that I got through that. But that 14 months was something, like I said, going through those retirements, the ceremonies, the memorials, the holidays, like all of the things. I mean, facing those things it's a necessity because you need to deal with your emotions. And I think look at your emotions for what they are, because your emotions shouldn't drive you into anything, but they should be indicators of what you're experiencing for a reason. And it was the love you have for people, the love that you had for someone, the effect that their life or the loss of their life had on you. Working through those emotions for what they are, acknowledging them and giving them the right that they deserve, understanding that, they're all that happened for a reason. And it was something that we all kind of accepted. We put ourselves there knowing the risks we took, focusing on, like any situation, focusing on the valuables of, like for Tico was an amazing teammate, amazing friend. He was going around warning us of an insider attack whenever the attack happened that killed him. Like he died while he was saving us, giving us, the heads up that like this was about to happen. I think it's processing all those things, the feelings, the way that you need to, I mean, those processes are normal. And I think they're things and whether you use therapy to get through them, like you absolutely need a community of people around you that support you, because you are not designed to do anything by yourself. That's one of the advantages the military we understand is being on a team and having the support of our teammates, but taking like-minded people around you to support you to get through those things. Like that's why AA will provide you a sponsor, or, recommend you get a sponsor, or, you have that. That's a Christian fundamental that you have believers around you to support you through the challenges of your life and through each other through your lives. I think that's a requirement that you got to have as well.
So for someone that's listening to this that might be in a low place, that's feeling like a failure, that's feeling unmotivated, that feels guilty from maybe the past experiences or things are weighing on them, what would you say is the first mindset step that you'd tell them to take?
Firstly, I'd say don't compare yourself to anybody else, because, they say comparison is the thief of joy, but we know so little about other people. The perspective we have on them is usually not accurate. I think most of the men that I know that were highly successful, I learned feel very similar to how I do, where our careers in the military, as great as they may have seemed or whatever they may have looked like from the outside, looked like a series of failures to a lot of us.
Mhm.
I learned that Tico's death was something that every single guy there that day felt like he was responsible for. So I think someone is in a low place. You should look at the fact that failures are a part of life. They're going to happen. They happen to every single one of us. And they have happened, they are happening, and there are more going to happen. So understanding that, I listened to my buddy Nick Lavery say something that just popped in my head recently
Oh,
about,
Nick was on the show. Huh.
yeah, amazing guy. But he was talking about a talk he had with a football team and the shape of a football being unique. But whenever it hits the ground, it can bounce off in any direction. You can do everything right and you still can't control every variable. I felt that way about Tico. Like I did everything that I knew to do. I did it well. I did it right. And he still died. Good men die in combat. And there's outside of combat. I mean, in any situation, you prepare and you train to control as many of the variables as you possibly can, but you still won't be able to control them all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where resilience comes in. That's where understanding that sometimes no matter what you do, things are going to fail. And that's where you have to have practiced stressful situations, and you have to practice, feeding that voice in your head, the one that I said talks the loudest, that you use the most. You have to have that voice telling you like this happens and it's okay. Having people around you that are supportive friends that also tell you that is a huge advantage. whenever you can't see where you're going to go or how you're going to get out of it, just see where you're going right now. It's that it's out of I've heard that recently also of the boy and the horse and the something
Oh
else
my
syndrome.
God. When you said that, that was the line I was thinking of when the horse was like, "Can you see the next step?" And the boy was like,
Right.
"Yeah." And he goes, "Then just focus
Just
on
take
that."
that. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a useful thing. There have been times
So
that
useful.
whenever I was still in the Navy and I didn't make it out of SEAL training again, the second time, and I was like, I am a failure at life. I don't even know what I'm just going to leave the military and give up. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I still remember having that similar experience where I woke up and I was like, I remember waking up in my bed in the barracks and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was like, I'm going to put my feet on the floor. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to go to the bathroom and brush my teeth, and I'll figure it out from there. And it was life for a little while was step by step like that. It's like I'll do this, and then it's like, okay, well, I've got to go to work today, so I'll get dressed. I'll I'll get myself there, and I'll figure out
Yeah.
what there is to do today. And it's one step at a time. Sometimes.
Yes. I mean, that's how I am. That's why that quote just came to my mind because that's how I am right now with I have 1,000 things as an entrepreneur, but we do have this nonprofit event and I'm putting on and there's going to be I don't know how many people, but at this point we're like projecting around 1,000 and it's one human being putting on an event and
No
it's
big
my
deal.
first year and I have no idea what I'm doing. But and there's this giant list and I'm just like, just focus on one thing. Just focus on the next thing. It'll all come together or it won't. Like it's
Yeah.
there. That's it. Like it's either going to come together or it's not, and you're going to learn a lot. It's the first one, whatever. But yeah, first step, right? I also feel like when we're overwhelmed and we're anxious, that's the first quote I go to because when you're overwhelmed and anxious, it just means you're not narrowing it down. You're not focusing. You're not focusing on the one thing, the first thing. So I want to ask you also because I didn't get a chance to talk to you about your transition or anything like that, but I'm curious after leaving the military, moving into consulting, founding your company Valor Point, like what was the why behind starting your company and what you currently do?
Leaving the military, like I said, I was medically retired. I did 17 years on active duty. And so in 2020, I medically retired. Leaving the military was all I'd known. I enlisted at 17, did 17 years. And I felt like I was starting my life for the first time in a way. I had to do an appraisal, pretty quick appraisal, because from the time that I determined I was going to be medically retired until I was out was like 6 months. It was super quick. It didn't get to take place in really any of the transition programs or anything. But I had my wife, and while I was in the medical retirement board, she got pregnant with our first son, my 5-year-old. It's like, this is not great timing. I was like, I have these things to figure out. I'm like, so yeah, I did a quick appraisal of a lot of things aligned for me by priority, and that was what's going to be best for my wife and my son. And if something contributes to them and my family, then I'll do that. And if it doesn't, then I won't. That led my transition in a positive way. And I had to learn some lessons kind of the tough way as far as like civilian employment, where like there's no loyalty and there's very little integrity in a lot of civilian jobs. My first job I did for a week, I worked for a training company and it was atrocious. They brought me in and they're like, hey, you want to be the president of the medical division? I was like, absolutely. And they're like, we're going to pay you $62,000 a year to run this thing. And I got there and I was it. I was the whole division. I'm like, this is not ideal. And they're like, hey, we got 3 different units coming to train on Monday, so have it ready. That was a nightmare. I think I worked there for a week, and then a good friend of mine. He became a good friend of mine. He hired me to be an instructor at the Special Operations Medical Training Center on Bragg. That was an amazing job. I got to do a couple of years there where I trained medics. I got to mentor them and prepare the next generation of guys that were coming up in the role that I had. I got to offload a lot of lessons learned and a lot of lessons that I had learned the hard way. I got to discuss with them and teach them. And it took me almost to the point where I would have been had I done 20 years. And then opportunity came up for me to go to a very large defense contracting firm. And that's where I was working on human performance and health programs for SOCOM for the DoD. That was a good opportunity also because I felt like I got to slowly step out of the military in the path that I was given to take. Again, getting to work as a medic instructor was a job that I could have had on active duty, but they have a collection of active duty contractors and GS workers there. Being there as a contractor was great. And then it's like one more step out is where I was still working for the military, but from the civilian side, from the defense contracting industry. So I was still contributing to the betterment of military personnel, particularly SOCOM, to special operators. In my mind, that was in the same vein of what I've been doing for my entire life. Is like I've just always wanted to bear benefit to the folks I was working with in that community. So I was working on programs supporting them, which led directly into what I'm doing now with Valor Point. Valor Point is something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. And just starting a few months ago, I put this together. And Valor Point is an opportunity for me to continue helping people because getting to help veterans make a successful transition out is something that I'm going to support. But also, there's a lot of lessons that we learned within the special operations community that are applicable to the lives of executives and professionals outside of the military that are in high stress environments, that are working hard, that they get consumed by their jobs. I used to think we were a much more exclusive group. And in a way, there's things that are exclusive, but humanity, regardless of what side you're on, we're more the same than anyone realizes, I think. And I've seen that. To bear benefit from the lessons we learned the hard way, if I can provide those to professionals, I think I could still help out a lot of people in a lot of ways. And to align their lives with healthy lifestyles, getting their physical health taking like acknowledged and addressed, and then healthy lifestyle, which is a much larger picture of your clinical health than a lot of people realize, but how that feeds into your vocation. I think your mindset, that in alignment with your mindset, feeds directly into your performance at your job, whether it be a stressful business meeting coming up, or you've got 1,000 people that are all coming to watch you on stage and see what you're going to do, and it's all on you. It's like I think there's a lot of things that we can share. I've been in talks with Nick Lavery, as a matter of fact, to collaborate with him and work with him, since he's already been successful at doing that for a number of years. Yeah. And it kind of a parallel effort of me doing Valor Point, working with him, I think just doing our best to continue helping people.
I love that. I love that. You should also connect with Chris Lee. Do you know Chris Lee? He is the Green Beret too. He works with Nick sometimes. He has his own thing. But, as you guys are all talking, I think you guys all provide such amazing insight and value that could really help, that do really help the civilian world, whether it is just the individual or whether it's the business, whether it's the team, and I think that more people need to go to guys like you, go to your companies that are all, encompassing and can really help, because you guys provide actionable takeaways, and just your 1 hour here was so valuable, and I could see the value that you could bring to a business, an individual, a team. So I actually, oh my goodness, the final question I have to ask you, obviously, what can we do on an everyday basis to strengthen our mindset so when inevitable challenges come our way, we can handle them?
Do hard things in rehearsal and practice, like regularly, whether that be making yourself get up early to do a hard workout in the morning, or making yourself abstain from something that you really like. That's been a measure of success from everyone from, guys who have had a lifetime doing it, like Nick Lavery, to, Tim Ferriss and some of the things he discusses, where he'll, on an annual basis, he'll do a fast and he'll eat beans and rice for a while. And he's like, is this just the tragedy and hardship I thought it was going to be? I think make yourself do hard things out of choice, because that helps reinforce and strengthen your resilience to whenever things happen that you didn't ask for and you didn't know were coming. Just practice your resilience. Continue talking in that positive voice in your head, telling yourself that, hey, this is fine. Make it a default. I think like, of course, like do more like the Andrew Huberman things, like get sunlight and fresh air and, eat healthy and get your steps, I think, but also feed the healthy voice in your mind that's telling you that this is good. This is fine. This is okay. And you're going to be fine.
I like that. I remember, it's so funny because I just said to myself the other day, like, I was in, I guess it was like therapy for a while, life coaching, whatever you want to call it. And I remember like hearing you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And I'm like, well, that makes life easy, right? And it's like I can just say no to anything I don't want to do. I choose to do everything. And the thing is, yeah, that's 100% true. That's 100%. I do not have to do anything I don't want to do, and I choose to do whatever, right? I choose, right? And it's so funny because I've been setting a proper and I did this back with Randy a while ago. One of the first exercises he ever given me when we worked together was setting a time to go to bed and setting a time to wake up and sticking to it for 40 days. And then after that, we increased it and stuff like that. And he goes, it can't change. I don't care what you have going on that day. I don't care what's, you have to be at bed at this time. You have to be up at this time. It does not change. And it was just funny because my family was like, man, you're so rigid. You're so this or you're so that. And it's like, and sometimes I do things where like I will take something away that I might want just because I want to learn something about myself. I want to put myself through something like that. And I just think like simple things like that. It's like, no, now I need to choose the hard. I need to, like I don't like getting up and going to the gym, but I choose it because I don't like it and it's hard, but I do know that in the way it's going to benefit me. So I think to your point, it's picking something that you don't want to do, but and also it just could be like you mentioned, rice and beans. It could be just something, or you like a Snickers bar and you're going to take that away for the next 30 days and just see how you react and how your body is and how you are and your mindset. And it does do training. And I appreciate everything that you brought to the table during this podcast. You were, oh my God, so valuable. And I'm going to drop down in the show notes all your contact information. If you have a website, send it my way, because that way people could, you do individual businesses, you do them all, right, with your business?
Correct. Individuals, groups.
Great. So that way, anyone that's listening that wants to reach out, even just talk to you, I highly, highly recommend. This was amazing. And again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And everyone that's listening, please like, share, comment, subscribe, become a Substack member for all those extra goodies that only your Substack subscribers get. And I will see you guys all next Wednesday. Thank you.